Hello and welcome to Journey into History, the Loki after show from the Comic Crush. As always, I'm Paul and I'm here with my variant Liz.
Hello.
Hello, Liz. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Yeah, good. Just before we get into the show this week, I do have to say thank you very much to all the new subscribers out there. We've hit a small milestone, which is 50 subscribers. I'm really grateful for that. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. A lot of you are now coming from outside the UK, as I understand as well. I do just want to give a quick shout out to Sarah and the guys at the Blue Tram magazine, which is based in Egypt, which is a really good arts magazine. If you guys like art and artists, they do comic art and traditional kind of painting and modern art as well. You should check out their page on Facebook, but that's the Blue Tram. There's some great stuff happening there, and they have got a lot of focus on Loki at the moment because I understand they're big fans of the show, and a few of those folks have been kind of chatting with me in the comments recently. So thank you very much, guys. Hi, and I hope you're good. We're going to just jump straight in today, Liz, because quite an odd episode I found of Loki. I don't know how you found it, but I found it quite strange because nothing really seemed to happen. But in a way, a lot of things did happen. It's almost like Seinfeld, a show about nothing. Yeah, so I mean, we're moving on from last week. I expected that they would kind of start diving into the after effects of Sylvie's bombs sent across the timeline. But we didn't.
No, and I think completely to the show's benefit.
Okay.
I think that throwing a character like Sylvie into the mix, you needed to step outside that, that big plot stuff, in order to sort of get to know her, and especially kind of have the two Lokis, if she is in fact a Loki. There's not, where I'm still, I've still got my theories.
Yeah, and I'm now kind of falling into that kind of line of thinking as well, because she never says that she isn't a Loki. She just refutes the name and doesn't want to be called Loki, and prefers to be called Sylvie. So it is kind of in line with what you were saying last week. And, well done for being so spot on with the theory there, by the way. I mean,
they haven't confirmed anything, but I think there were a lot of hints in this episode that that they are at the very least drawing from, the second Enchantress, who is called Sylvie in the comics. And, particularly for the fact that her power is enchantment, which isn't, there are a lot of similarities between her and Loki, but there are a lot of differences. And one is their power set, basically. They use magic completely differently. She uses magic to enchant people, where Loki, he has a lot of other different tricks that he does. He uses illusions, and he can shapeshift, but he doesn't know how to do what she can do, and she doesn't seem to know how to do what he can do.
And in fact, he does ask her about how she kind of enchants, and she talks about making memories from, making illusions from people's memories. And that kind of reminded me a lot of the Scarlet Witch and some of the stuff that she does. Although not entirely similar, but entirely the same, but very similar. And especially now that we've seen that whole kind of WandaVision series. So that there was some interesting stuff there, but also kind of a lot of bonding between the two of them, which I found quite nice. Just on a side note, you'll remember better than I did. Last week, did she have an English accent?
Well, she barely spoke last week.
Right.
I'm sure her accent didn't change.
Yeah, like it was so weird because I could have sworn that the few lines she did say in the week before, maybe I was just thinking because all the characters she kind of possessed were American. And I was just like, I'm sure she didn't have an English accent last week. And of course, it was so funny to me. I was getting super confused because Sasha Lane who plays the TVA agent, is English, but was doing an American accent. It's just like, I'm sure she was doing an English accent last week.
Right.
I was just like, what is going on? But, we see the two of them propelled. We assume it's forward in time to an apocalypse. But
yeah, it's 2077 is the year.
And a place called Lamentis 3.
Lamentis 1.
Lamentis 1. And also an apocalypse that apparently no one escaped from, which was really kind of doom laden. And of course, they've broken the time pad, and trouble ensues. I like this notion of Loki having to be once again stuck in an apocalypse, because obviously whether he knows it or not, eventually he will go through, or should, I guess, go through Ragnarok, right?
Right.
We're assuming that is going to happen, and that is a definite. So I kind of liked that. How did you feel about it?
That aspect of it, or
yeah, just in general, the whole Lamentis 1 stuff.
I thought it worked really well. And it really told you a lot about the differences between them. And just and some of the similarities, but for two characters who are supposed to be, from what we've been told, a variant of the same person, they are very different. Her attitude from the outset is very pragmatic. She's not sort of the capricious character that he is, where he he knows that they're in apocalypse, but he sort of takes it in stride, and he's still using his sort of charm and guile, as he says, as his way out, as his best tool.
I think that one of the reasons he was so calm, though, is because he was kind of expecting the TVA to show up at any minute and kind of pluck him back. And of course, that doesn't happen this week.
No,
already. Although they do briefly get back to the TVA, as Sylvie is kind of planning her little takeover. I mean, Loki plans to take over the TVA, or at least he says he does. Sylvie's plans are something different.
And we don't really know what they are exactly.
No. But we do kind of get a clue as we go on. Interesting enough, in talking about this episode in the kind of apocalyptic setting, someone said on Twitter, it might have been PJ Holden or something, it was a comics sort of creator, said, I see they've gone full Doctor Who by setting the episode in a quarry this week. It's just yeah.
It was very Doctor Who this episode.
Which I loved. I love that notion of kind of sort of quasi cheap look, except it didn't look cheap at all. It looked really ridiculously expensive. It's right. It was probably the most expensive looking episode of any of the Marvel shows that I've seen so far, personally.
Probably
a lot of visual effects and a lot of kind of set dressing and set design and costume, very kind of extraneous costume stuff. To my mind, anyway, Kirby meets Mobius, and I just found it really kind of, almost like proper sci-fi.
They do not skimp on the budget, these Marvel shows.
No, I guess they don't. Guys, I've got to warn you, by the way. Sorry, I'm looking at my little indicators here and just say that we do seem to be having some teething troubles today. A couple of odd technical issues. So if it goes out, we will try and get it back this time. We've already had one aborted version of this podcast this afternoon. So sorry if it suddenly glitches out, but I keep watching the internet indicator kind of glitch away. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, it was an interesting episode, but I don't know how much I've got to say about it, because I felt like it was just one long chase and nothing was really happening. Things were happening between the characters. The most interesting thing for me is the revelation about the TVA. I don't know if you want to talk about that yet, but That was
Right.
quite an interesting conceit, and something I think you kind of didn't you mention this last week. You kind of said you had certain suspicions about the TVA, or I think someone. Oh, I tell you who it was. It was Eva Webb, I believe her name is, who's under @Eva is adorable or Eval's adorable. On Twitter was saying they feel that the TVA probably doesn't exist and that it's all kind of a big scam. Right. And we get the biggest indication of that in a conversation between Loki and Sylvie, where Sylvie tells him that the TVA's hasn't created all its agents. They are in fact, or Loki assumes they are in fact variants.
Right.
Which does explain, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, basically. Well, yeah, it's, you know, unbeknownst to her, because, you know, the TVA told Loki, yes, you know, all of the agents were created. Sylvie, you know, knows for a fact, you know, because with the show, you know, this episode opens inside the memories of C20, who Sylvie is trying to extract the information from. And, you know, she knows for a fact, yes, she was totally just a regular girl, loved margaritas, and is definitely not a creation of the TVA.
Now, it kind of, in looking at the episode and then watching the end credits, there's no end credit scene, we should say, which I'm really surprised at. So far, there hasn't been any end credits stings or mid-credits teasers or anything. It does give, you know, it does make sense of the fact that one of the things you see in the end credit sequence is a leaflet that says, "So you're a variant," which, when you think about it, isn't something you'd give to a prisoner, someone you'd arrested. It's something you'd give to someone you're trying to kind of coddle or look after, or, you know. And of course, it does give rise. What do they do with all the variants that they capture? They must kind of, you know, put them to work somehow. But then, you know, if you take a variant out of its timeline, what happens to that timeline? Right. You know, is a variant only ever a deviation from a timeline, or is it a, you know, do the variants have as much kind of predetermined patterns as the real thing, the quote unquote real thing? Because really, wouldn't everyone be a variant of some kind or another?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's you know.
Well, there's the sacred timeline, I guess. So, sorry, I like to try and think these things through.
Well, yeah. I mean, it poses a lot of interesting questions. You know.
And also, what would be their plan for Loki? Because Loki has said, "Oh, you know, I can't really go back, can I?" And therefore, what would happen to him once the job's over, once the sort of mission is complete?
Right. Would he be turned into a, you know, like, TBS. You know, right. Yeah. You have to assume that they've mind wiped these people to believe that they, you know, were created by the TVA to work for the TVA. And, you know, I read this, I can't remember where, but, you know, does that mean that Owen Wilson was, you know, just some random guy who loved jet skis, you know, before?
It could be, and also
to work for the TVA.
Yeah, I mean, like, since Sylvie creates places from people's memories, from, you know, illusions from people's memories, surely there'd have to be memories that she could access easily, rather than. So, do they actually remember and have chosen the TVA, or? I mean, it's so kind of, it opens up a lot of questions. And I mean, I hope next week we're going to get some answers, because I want to see what's happening to all these kind of timeline bombs she's created. You know, what's she doing there?
Yeah, I mean, you know, but I like that they took a step back from that, because that would have, you know, really, like, I think if you want, you know, to sort of get to know her character, you couldn't have had all that stuff, you know, going on at the same time. Really, like, you know, I think that you know, obviously she's going to be a significant character, and in order to, you know, appreciate that, I think stepping away from like the big important plot stuff needed to happen. And, you know, and it led to some really lovely moments between both of them. And I think I said even in the first episode of this show that, you know, this seems to be a very character driven series. And, you know, tellingly, we don't even find out a ton about Sylvie, but we find out a lot more about Loki, like our Loki.
I think, you know, I wonder if they're kind of saving the reveal about Sylvie's true identity until later in the show, you know? Although if everyone's kind of guessed it already.
I mean, the thing is, like, I am not entirely sure whether or not she is, like, you know, is she the Enchantress? Is she Lady Loki? Or is she a little bit of both? Like, it could be that she's sort of an amalgam of the two characters combined, because there are a lot of things about her that are very Loki-ish.
Right.
But then, of course, there's a lot of stuff that really isn't. You know, so they kind of, you know, I can't quite work out whether they've gone for, you know, sort of a combination of those two characters, or if they're just kind of misleading you with the idea that she's Lady Loki and she is in fact just the Enchantress.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't imagine they'll ever actually call her the Enchantress, partly because of the you know, Enchantress from the Suicide Squad.
Well, I mean, no. The Enchantress from Marvel, they could absolutely call her the Enchantress. I mean, but so? Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Amora though is really the, you know, the famous Enchantress, the, you know, the really well-known Enchantress, and you know, so I absolutely think that they could still do Amora, you know, in one of the Thor films. I'd be disappointed if they don't. But this version of you know, the Sylvie Lushton version of the Enchantress isn't as well known, so they could kind of play around with her and do, you know, do what they wanted. I mean, the you know, her backstory is that she was, you know, ensorcelled by Loki to believe that she was something she wasn't.
Sorry, ensorcelled.
Yes, that's a word. It's a word. Look it up.
I'm sure it is. It's just
yeah. So it's very possible that she could believe she's a Loki or was a Loki and is in fact not, because she's under, you know, the magical thrall of a different Loki, which is kind of, you know, still my theory.
Oh yeah, the Richard E. Grant theory. Right. Okay. And you know, we do get to a point where we almost get a look at the Timekeepers this week, because, you know, Sylvie breaks back into the TVA with the aim of heading up in the gold elevators and meeting the bosses, but doesn't quite happen.
No.
So I'd be curious to see if we are ever going to meet them, or if it is just going to be revealed to be a big scam. Right. Which increasingly is the way I'm thinking. Like, yeah, it's there. Although, but then, you know, to what purpose? You know, what's the point of all this?
Right.
They're flinging Infinity Stones around like confetti, and you know, not really bothering about the Tesseract. So I'm kind of curious as to what the power is behind it. You know, I'm waiting for someone to scream Galactus online.
That'll be a good day.
Yeah. No one said mutants yet, which I'm kind of surprised to see for this one, because we keep every Marvel show we keep.
Oh, I know.
Mutants. Who knows what's going to happen? Yeah, I overall I kind of like the episode and enjoyed it. I'm really keen to see next week's now and see what's going to happen. I don't really have a lot to say about this one. Sorry, guys. I feel like a bad host because I'm just like, not, you know, I'm not disappointed by it. I really enjoyed it, but I'm sure there's loads of stuff I'm missing.
I mean, like, for me as a Loki fan, I really liked, you know, a lot of the character work that they did. Like, I really liked the conversations between him and Sylvie, where they actually kind of open up to each other, or, especially he opens up to her, and they discuss things like family and their different powers and, love, like, which is another thing that kind of was like, oh, she's got to be the Enchantress. They're having all these conversations about love. And, that is, the Enchantress, that's kind of her thing. Like, so it just seemed all like these little hints, just keep pushing me in the direction of thinking that that's going to be at least part of the makeup of her character. But really, it was. Oh, sorry. What were you going to say?
No. And just I felt like the place they left it in was quite. We're told no one escapes from the Mentis one, and sure enough, they're kind of spoilers, guys. They're stuck there. And I do love the fact that she just kind of saunters off in a huff.
Yeah,
that was great.
It was. I mean, those fight scenes were super cool. Watching them, both like, because you don't see a lot of fight scenes with Loki. You do see occasionally, but usually it's him using his magic, rather than actually physically fighting anyone. Because obviously Thor is is the one the one in the family who is known for being the great warrior.
Yeah. And the fight scenes were actually really well choreographed. Like I found them really kind of, there was a lot of impact there.
Right.
And I really liked them. So, hats off there. It was a very polished, well put together episode.
Yeah. And I like seeing him use the daggers. Like, that's like that, those are like his sort of other weapon that, I don't know if you've seen him. Well, no, you have seen him use him sort of since Thor 1, but
Ragnarok and
you do see him use them in Ragnarok, and then he's sort of asking for them in Thor: The Dark World, and they won't give them to him.
I love the fact that last week he got to hold them for all of about 3 seconds.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much what happens in Dark World too.
Yeah.
And then love is an imaginary dagger. I love that. That was really funny. Like that whole scene on the train where, she decides to take a nap and he gets hammered and, starts like singing Asgardian folk songs to entertain the other passengers on the train.
I really like that. I just like the feel of those things. They were really good and really well played. And I like the Asgardian language they made up. That was quite nice. I honestly, I don't really have much for this one. Sorry, I know it's terrible, but I don't like. I think it's possible to really enjoy something, but not kind of. I feel we kind of hit a way station point where we're just kind of waiting now for the big kind of turn of whatever's coming next week. And there were things
I got a lot out of this episode. Like,
but I think you're invested differently, not more necessarily, but I think you're invested differently because your favorite character and stuff, and indeed a character I do enjoy, watching. I'm just I'm kind of more curious about where it's going to go. And I do kind of want answers, I do want some of these mysteries solved. I do that. It's a thing with Marvel. It's like they'll constantly keep you on the dangle. And it's just like, actually, I really do want some answers to some of this stuff.
Well, you'll get them.
Yeah, well, bloody better.
We've just hit the midway point anyway,
So three more episodes to go. Which does make me worry again about the pacing of some of the episodes. Like, I hope we're not going to get a Falcon and Winter Soldier thing where everything's packed into episodes 3 and 6 and is kind of bursting to get out. Because I really feel that a lot of that pacing let that show down, unfortunately. And although overall I enjoyed it, it was the one I enjoyed. It's kind of the one episode by episode I enjoyed the most up to that point. But overall, as a series, I was a bit kind of
however, I loved it, but I know what you mean. The last episode for me, it was like the last episode that had pacing issues. Like the rest of it, I don't really feel that way. But
So I'm kind of curious to see where they'll go with this week. In other things happening in the kind of film and TV comic book world, or comic book film and TV world, we did have a Suicide Squad trailer this week. I don't know if you've watched that.
I have watched
that, which again still looks like it's going to be quite possibly comic book movie of the year for me. Like I think just really fun things happening there. That's over on the Comic Crush if you want to go and take a look, guys. But yeah, great trailer. I'm sure everyone who's watching this has seen it by now.
It's very, very James
terrific.
Gunn. It's like, him really putting his stamp on, on that franchise, which is a good thing, a very good thing for that franchise.
Well, I mean, he's now said that obviously the next Guardians will be his last, that and the holiday special. Although I'm not even sure if he's directing the holiday special, although I'm pretty sure he is. But yeah, he's kind of said that it's his last. Dave Bautista has said that the next Guardians of the Galaxy is going to be his last.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So.
Oh.
I mean, maybe if anyone's heard different, they can kind of correct me on that. But I believe there's been a couple of interviews where he said, "Okay, this is my last." Kind of bow out as the character, So changes afoot, really. I'm curious to see what's happening. But yeah, I mean, the Marvel machine grinds on.
It sure does. Yep. And just for me, it really hasn't dropped the ball at all. Like, loved this week's episode. Thought it was a lot of fun. Thought we found out some neat stuff about Loki as a character. Like, it was really nice seeing him talk about his mom, who I kind of wonder if they're like, if there's going to be some Rene Russo cameo in this show.
Oh, it could be. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they because obviously, in the comics, in the films, you kind of get the idea that, the favorite son, of Odin was definitely Thor. But you get the sense that that Loki had a closer relationship with his mom.
Well, interestingly enough, like the two, like Thor has had his healing moment with Hela, not Hela,
Frigga,
yeah. Thor has had his healing moment with his mum in Endgame, but Loki never got his, or hasn't yet. So,
and he also blames himself for her death because sent, he's the one who sort of inadvertently pointed, the Dark Elves in the direction of the castle, thinking he was kind of setting them to go kick Thor's ass. And instead, it was Frigga who died.
Yeah. And you kind of got to figure that he wants a kind of, I don't know. He kind of wants to settle that particular demon, like I suspect that he kind of really
he doesn't have any closure, and it's like, and it seems like, I mean, she was the one who taught him magic. His last interaction with her was telling her like, well, no, you're not my mother, so I mean, he has a lot of unresolved issues surrounding his mom.
I wonder if the series will end somehow with him giving up the magic.
Really? What makes you think that?
I don't know. I just think I wonder if he'll. I don't know. We'll wait and see. I'm curious about where it's.
I don't know why he would, but
I'm just looking at the calendar actually. This because we've got next week's episode to go, which hits the 30th of June, and we'll be here on the 1st of July, giving you the sort of lowdown on it. And then we've got 2 more episodes after that. But in between that, we've also got Black Widow. coming on the 9th of July, which is
Wow.
long awaited.
Very long awaited.
I don't think I'll be going to the cinema to watch this. I think I'm going to Disney Plus this.
I think I'm going to the cinema. I mean, I don't
really?
know. Yeah, I'm going to the cinema. Okay. I got to do it.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not super comfortable at the moment with cinemas. I'm not super comfortable with the presentation in cinemas at the moment. So that's one of the main reasons I'm staying out of it. But yeah, I don't know. We're going to double up on episodes.
We'll have to figure it out.
Yeah. So no firm date yet, guys, for when we're going to do that kind of Black Widow episode. I suspect within a day or two of the movie, around about 12th of July, I think it'll be us on the Monday going out semi-live. I almost did this episode completely live, Liz. Thank God I didn't, because
no,
a lot of technical problems this week. But yeah, still lots happening. So sorry if I seem a bit subdued this week. I'm kind of, this episode caught me off guard a bit. I enjoyed it, but obviously in different ways to the way that you did, Elizabeth. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where we're at next week. Are we going to kind of be in sync?
Oh, I'm sure we're going to be back in the action next week. I mean, this was like a step outside the action, and we're going to have to guess that they don't get blown to smithereens since we have 3 episodes left. So, something tells me that somehow the TVA is going to swoop in.
It'd be great just to see Owen Wilson running around doing the show for 3 weeks. Wow. I'm relieved. That would be awesome. Actually, it'll be very funny to see if Owen Wilson gets to do any stuff with Richard E. Grant, because you get one of the most relaxed actors in the world with one of the most uptight actors in the world.
Yep.
I can't wait for that.
I can't wait for that.
But yeah, good stuff to come, no doubt. I think we're going to leave it out. Do you have anything else you want to?
Okay, yeah. Before I thought, this is going to be a talking point on the internet, and I was very happy to see that they canonically confirmed Loki as bisexual.
Yes, yeah.
Which is like, it's a it makes perfect sense with the character. I mean, it's already been confirmed in the comics. Like Kieran Dillon, his Young Avengers run, like sort of confirmed that a couple of years ago, sort of 2017 or whatever it was when he was writing Young Avengers. But it was nice to see them do it in the show. And, actually go out and say it. Whereas, they kind of dance around things like that sometimes with Disney projects. And so it was good, to see that sort of actually acknowledged.
Yeah. And also, I mean, to someone who's thousands of years old, what would it matter?
Right. Like and he's a character who can shapeshift between genders, I mean, why wouldn't he be?
And I think increasingly, I'm sure that was probably hinted at first in fan fiction somewhere along.
Hinted at? Oh my God, Paul!
Well, what I mean. Yeah, sorry. Sorry for being a bit subtle there. I'm sure it was suggested, shall we say, first in fan fiction. And I find that it is very much the purview of these big kind of universities to start leaning into that stuff now. Whether you like it or not, I don't care either way. I think it's fine with or without. But it makes absolute sense for the character. And again, it adds a new fun element. It adds something to the future. It gives his relationships a place to go. And of course, butting up against the much more kind of traditional relationships that Thor might have.
Right.
So that kind of will, I'm sure, become more of a thing as we move on, and more of a story point and much more of something that they want to explore. So certainly worth, I think that's definitely worth them kind of looking into, and certainly something I'll be keen to see play out. Anything else for this week's episode that you enjoyed?
Pretty much the things we've discussed. All the interplay between Loki and Sylvie was really enjoyable. I look forward to finding out more about her character. They kind of gave me enough information to make me really like, okay, am I right? Am I wrong with my theory? Like, I can't decide. I really liked that they gave her the crown with the broken horn, which is a very like specific Loki look. It's like, that's where we kind of leave off with Loki at the end of Al Ewing's really excellent Loki Agent of Asgard series.
I'm hoping to have a lot of that stuff. I think at the end, I'm sure I can't remember if we talked about this last week, but hopefully at the end of this series for episode 6, I'm hoping that you and I can do a bit of a discussion on Loki reads and stuff. And I would have caught up with reading a few of those books by then, because I've got a lot of the stuff here. It's just finding the time at the moment to read it. Speaking of stuff to read, if you go to the website now, there is and again, going with DC, not Marvel. There's a piece on Supergirl being super. Tom King's and Bilquis Evely's Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow hit stores last week. So I've given Supergirl being super a reread and just done a brief sort of discussion piece on that on the website now, if you guys want to take a look at that. And I will be addressing Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow as well, which was a good comic, and I advise you to take a look. Also, in terms of comics, Demon Days by Peach Momoko was an excellent Marvel read. Kind of a redo of some of the X-Men and Marvel mythos. I believe it's going to be called the Yoshida Saga when collected, and it is kind of a look at Marvel via the lens of Japanese myth and culture. Sort of an Elseworldsy type thing. So I really recommend that, because I was not expecting to like it. I kind of picked it up because I quite like Peach Momoko's covers and things like that. And I think this is her first US sequential work. And for the moment, she's exclusive to Marvel. So she's doing a bunch of these. Do give it a look. Definitely worth a read. Liz, if you haven't read it yet, I haven't. You'd probably really like it, because there are kind of recognizable Marvel characters in there. Right. But then they're not exactly the same as they were. So it's kind of like a 1602 type thing, like where you can recognize. You can kind of, I'll be interested in getting some more backstory on it, but I really enjoyed that. Also, DC have relaunched Checkmate, following on from the events of Event Leviathan. So you get a bit of Damian Wayne and Talia al Ghul action in there. That was a lot of fun. Plus, Lois, Ollie, Queen. It was a good first opening issue. And who's writing it? Bendis. So it's following on from. I believe the book was actually planned to kind of follow hard on the heels of Event Leviathan, but due to COVID and various other things, it got pushed way back. So, I mean, I don't know. I think there's been some kind of anti-Bendis stuff out there in terms of his run at DC. I've actually really enjoyed his DC stuff. I think he's done some interesting things. He's working with Alex Maleev on this book. So I just want to jam in some comics because we're not doing the comic show at the moment, and we do still read comics even though we're not doing the comic show. So that's good stuff. DC's Infinite Frontier miniseries starts this week. Also very entertaining. Reptilian. Yes. Which I haven't read yet. I haven't read it yet, good. So don't. Okay. Yeah. I won't. Quite. The art style is quite different for Liam Sharp. It's a lot closer to something like Arkham Asylum. the Dave McKean,
Right.
the game and Dave McKean, the Grant Morrison, Dave McKean work in its look. Apparently, originally meant for Steve. Oh God, it's gone. The name's gone. Sorry, the artist who sadly died, who did
Steve Dillon. Oh, it was supposed to be
Steve Dillon. I'm
Steve
sorry.
Dillon. Oh wow.
Yeah.
So but he's been planning this for years then, because I mean it was quite a while ago.
It certainly looks that way. Quite interesting kind of storytelling choices. Very different for a Batman book. But yeah, I quite enjoyed it. But it is a dark book in terms of its visuals. And I kind of really, I would say read it under strong light. That's where you can kind of get as much. And if you're reading it on digital, turn your screen up as bright as you can, because
right. Okay.
I found some of it on the printed page a bit too murky.
I'm going to pick up my copy today, so I'm looking forward to
nice.
yeah.
Heading off to that's entertainment.
I am.
Excellent. So yeah. All good stuff out this week. Definitely worth taking a look at, and some of last week's stuff. Highly recommend those. We'll be back with a comic show, shortly after Loki finishes, the week after probably. But we will try and slip in a couple of comics reviews if the show runs short like it did this week. Yeah, guys, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure as always. Liz, thank you so much for coming on and chatting about this week's show. Always fun to hear your take on it and to get some of the background info on a lot of these characters. Thanks so much for dropping by again. Guys, thank you for all the subscribers, people on the Patreon. Thank you. Do take a look at the Patreon and the web store. There's plenty of stuff in there. The sale is still on the web store. I can't be bothered to take it down. Go for it. Pick out some comics. Yeah, so lots of stuff happening on the website. Keep an eye out. Hopefully there'll be some new stuff going up tomorrow. You might get I'm working for a few days, so you might get a couple of days where nothing goes up. Sorry. Because it's not the type of stuff I can do remotely. I have to be kind of here doing it from the laptop. But yeah, do kind of check it out. There'll be plenty of stuff going up, I hope, tomorrow. Have fun, guys. Goodbye, Liz.
Yep.
Farewell.
Until next week.
Until next week. We'll see what time zone we're in then. Bye-bye.
Bye.